Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to the September Monthly Report, where we talk about how my reading was going, how much money am I spending, and basically, how big is the slump? Because it was a little bigger than usual this month. I was struggling. It was the first full month back to school, and I also had a particularly bad flare-up with my chronic condition, so I also read a horrible book, just a terrible book. Can't remember the last time I hated a book that much. We will be talking about it, but it was a little bit to get over. Still, did read some, did spend some, so let's jump right in. First up is the notable news, and we really only have like one thing to talk about here, and that is the fact that I am closed to indie review requests for the basically rest of the year. I usually like to wait a little bit. I usually like to give a little bit more notice. I will give the warning to indie authors and indie presses around like October 1st that I will be closing for the holiday season November 1st and kind of give people time to get them in. However, I have been slumping, and even when I wasn't, the brain just didn't want the review books for some reason. I do like what I have on my list, but several of them are very intense, dark things that the brain was not gelling with for the longest time. But I will be reopening in the new year, and it is definitely going to be the new year this time around. I don't think I'm going to be reopening early like I did late December of last year, because I want to see if I can read all of the books I acquired in 2025 within 2025, effectively hitting TBR 0 again. So I'm probably going to be racing to get to the end before New Year's hits, but I will be reopening in January of next year. I'm probably going to be pickier because I am doing the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do, and that is such an intense reading challenge that basically every book I read at this point has to count for at least one prompt. So I guess if you're an indie author or an indie press looking for reviews, be sure to check up on my Herked updates when they start coming out. I am planning on doing one later this month, October, and then one in the new year. If you know of a book among your collection that counts for a prompt and you bring that up in your review request in the new year, you have increased your chances of getting a yes at like 1,000%. Pro tip there. But now let's jump into budget tracking. Up next is the budget tracking, and I'm doing really well on this one. Not as well or as frugal as I had intended when I started my Thrifty Reader Challenge at the beginning of the year, but I always kind of knew that that was for that season when we had to save up for some pretty big stuff and would eventually fall off. But I'm still sitting pretty well, I think, but you'll have to let me know. For the month of September, I spent $65.44 across 13 books for an average of $5 per book. For the entire year so far, I've spent $366.20 for an average of $40.60 per month. Now, even when I thought about dropping the Thrifty Reader Challenge, I wanted to keep my spending under $50 a month for books, so that's fantastic. We are still well within the goal. Honestly, I could probably keep it around $45 a month if I wanted to, but I like having the wiggle room. Part of the reason for that is I found a different way to support my local queer indie bookstore, because, I want them to stay around. They've been doing gangbusters in their first year, but, with the world being what it is, I'm nervous. So when they came out with these like memberships, essentially almost like Patreon, but not quite, where you could like subscribe or become a member of the store for a certain amount a month and get like perks and stuff, I was like, oh good, I don't have to try and go in every month and get a new book. We can just do this. I haven't even used any of my perks yet. I have not even been into the store in months, and I've been paying this subscription membership, whatever, this entire time. But I want the hipster queer indie bookstore to stick around. That's just the easiest way to go about it. But I probably will not be getting a lot of books moving forward, just because I do want to try and read all of my books before the end of the year. However, with Herked, I do need to keep up with both heritage months and new releases. And new releases are especially difficult to get from a library. That's usually when they're in the most demand. So I will very likely end up buying copies of books. I'll try to keep it ebooks or maybe use the blood donation Amazon gift cards, but I can't avoid getting those if I want to complete Herkyed the right way. So, still sitting pretty. Still really proud of myself. Can't wait to do the end of the year. How much money did I spend on books this year? I'm going to make a guess and say under $450. I think that's where I'm going to sit at by the end of the year. That would be really cool if I was there. Honestly, if I'm really frugal, it might even be under 400, but that also might be pushing it. Regardless, my frugality continues to amaze even me. Up next is challenge tracking. Like I mentioned before, I'm not going to be talking a lot about Herkyed here because it is such a massive challenge that it basically needs its own update videos. And I will be doing the whole going through the tracker and everything that you may have seen in other Herkyed updates. But regardless, let's talk about the other challenges I've been doing this entire year. 4 series, in another turn of fortunate and or unfortunate events, depending on how you look at it, I have DNF'd another series. The book I despised, the book I hated, was in a series, a super long one. It was book 12, and I don't even think it was halfway through. And I DNF'd the entire thing. I hated it that badly. And yes, we will be talking about it again. But that also means that I am now working on 13 series. I am not up to date with 8 of them, meaning 8 of them have installments I have not read. And I have a total books left of 51. I think that's like 2 or 3 just super long series holding up that number that I really need to get a move on. No movement on NetGalley. Still have not done anything with that. That is exactly where it was at, I believe, 89%. I'm just now realizing I did not actually include the number in the blog post linked down below. So, editing Margaret?
Yep, 89.
Thank you. Now, for the 52 book club challenge, I'm not going to lie. I low-key thought about dropping this one because I've been so obsessed with Herkyed. And I have a couple prompts left that I just don't like. It turns out I'm not a prequel girly. I don't know why. The prequel novellas, I just don't care. But I'm so close. I'm so close to the end this early in the year. I gotta finish it out. I'll make it work because I'm currently at 90%. That being said, though, I don't think I'm going to do another calendar year challenge, especially if there is another round of Herkyed that starts in the middle of next year. I think I'll just let Herkyed be the challenge, and then any other challenges I set for myself will be my own reading goals, like catching up on series, like getting NetGalley up, and all of that. But I don't think we're going to do another one of those like year-long calendar challenges because I found something better. Up next is the notable reads, and we will be starting with the negative notable read, and this is the book that I gave a 1 star. I despised. I have not been this mad at a book for a while, and it made me DNF 12 books into a series, and that is Spider Game by Christine Feehan. I'm not even going to take the Target sticker off of the title. It doesn't deserve it. But this is book 12 in the Ghostwalker series, a series of sci-fi romances about basically a bunch of mutants trying to fight off their evil maker and falling in love in the process. And these books were definitely written before the Me Too movement. A lot of super dark, hardened, heartless soldier types need a woman to tell them to not be a dick. And I've already had some issues with this series before with the weird dynamics, and you're just kind of, I don't know if I like that. But there's also been other books that had great relationships. But increasingly, as the series goes on, it's actually gotten worse, which is weird. In my experience, the more a romance author writes and gets feedback, they tend to get better as the relationships go on. They tend to get healthier as the author gets feedback. But this was also in an era when there wasn't as much automatic feedback, because like this is the 12th book in a series and this was 2016. So this was really when that concept of getting access to your favorite authors was picking up. But this book, I fucking despise the male main character of this book. Like awful, horrible, worst. The entire relationship just felt straight up abuse. I know that's going to get me like knocked down in the YouTube algorithm. I don't care. This channel isn't monetized. I hated it. the way he spoke to her, like he would act like a complete dick to her in public. And when she was hurt by it, he's like, well, that's just what I'm like in public. You're just going to have to deal with it. But she didn't have the option to walk away. Oh, and he did commit relationship abuse by trying to impregnate her without her knowledge or consent. He knew she was naive about that kind of thing and did not care. Had no shame when he got called out on it. Kept things from her constantly and then got pissy when she wanted to know about things that would affect her own goddamn life. Like, by the end, I was literally skipping the sex scenes, which is like half the reason you read a book like this. Look at the cover. I was skipping them because her consent felt coerced. Like, literally, I could not convince myself that it was a fully, freely consensual sex scene. That's how shit this relationship was. And here's the thing. Every book in this series is a different romance. So I could just move on and look at who the next one is going to be, but these characters are going to stick around. And I don't want to see that asshole even as a side character. And even if I was willing to do that, I'm now forever going to be nervous that a future installment is going to be more of this shit. Like, I don't want to risk it. I've already been having a couple books before that were just a little bit iffy, but this is the one where I'm like, I actively hate you. I actively want the FMC to inject him with poison because she's a mutant. That's her thing, spider. I actively wanted her to attack him and like lay him out flat. And not in like a sexy way, but like in a girl get away from your abuser way. I'm so annoyed. I don't want to say that I'm swearing off of all Christine Feehan's works because there's such a good kitschy melodrama to them, and there's like the most random science stuff in this series, but I have read some of her shifter stuff and it's a lot of the same, and I want kitschy romances. I want kitschy urban fantasy or urban sci-fi. But I also don't want relationships that are only 2 steps away from abusive. I don't think that's too much to ask. So no, we have DNF this series. I will be unhauling this somehow. I don't really want to put a cover like this in our little free library when we have so many kids in the neighborhood. So I might just, I don't know, maybe drop it off in a less child-infested neighborhood little free library. But we're done. We're done with that for good. As for our notable read in a positive way, we are going with Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. This is oceanic horror that I picked because I needed something to count for the merfolk prompt in the hardest reading challenge I'll ever do. And I knew I had to put a little bit more research into that because I just don't read a lot of mermaid books. But this is man-eating mermaids. Although I guess technically they're not mermaids, but they still count as merfolk. You'd have to read it to understand. But this is basically a book about a ship that went down a long time ago. They were filming a mockumentary like how Animal Planet used to do. But then they, accidentally discovered real mermaids and got killed by all of them. And our protagonists now want to find out the truth of it. How did it happen? And they're going right back into the fray with what they think is a new, better armored ship. But of course, the hubris is here. Admittedly, this book relies a lot on hubris and stupidity to work. There's so many times characters are making stupid chances and you're screaming at them, why is the boat still there? Why is the boat still fancily anchored? Because you can't regularly anchor in the Marianas Trench. Why is it still there? But then you have to realize it's still there because a mega corporation has their own plans to make themselves money. And then you're like, oh, well, of course. Of course the mega corp doesn't care about anyone's safety, obviously. And also, it's filled with academics doing oceanic work. And as someone with multiple degrees, I can fully believe the levels of hubris the scientists in this book get to. Not that I studied science, I was history, but I came into contact with enough of them and it tracks. It tracks. There was a lot of moments where I was like, okay, you're dead. You decided to swim down, or I guess move the little sub thing down farther after getting the warning, you're dead. Okay, oh, and they left the door open, they're dead. I could clock every death before it happens. I just wish the ending had been a little bit longer. The reveal of, what are they really doing here? wasn't quite as nice as what I would like. I would have liked a little bit more focus on that. Still loved the tension, loved that we had a sapphic romance. It's always nice. And the audiobook is pretty good. I went between this and the audiobook. Overall, a great pick if you want to see, mermaids or, mermaid adjacent creatures eating people. And that is it. On to October. I am going to be playing through a TBR game, or at least trying to. I will talk more about that in my next Herc Yet update because it is for that. I'm really going to be pushing to read as many of the books I own as possible because I have to do things like get new releases, and I want to do the Reindeer Readathon in December. So I've really got to be on top of things, and I need to start early. I am also doing QWERTY's Do Your Shitstorm, which is not reading, it is crafting. So I will likely need a lot of audiobooks this time. But I got a lot of crochet and sewing to do on top of reading. I got a lot going on. But I do feel like I am solidly out of the slump. I was actually reading at work today for the first time in a while. So we're making it work. We're getting there. And I do think I can accomplish most, if not all, of my goals by the end of the year. But if you want to stick around and see if that actually happens, feel free to subscribe and we'll go on this fun little journey together. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.